Ron, Mandy Hickson. At last, here we are.
Indeed.
Here we are.
Long awaited. Drum roll.
Exactly. Well, you say that I've been hinting to the patrons of the podcast to get inside info on the guests. I've been hinting that you were in the wings, and it's been
Finally.
when
You
keep saying Mandy's going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, fame and fortune that I bring, not.
But you full-time speaking.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, pretty much.
Motivational talks, workshops, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you're doing?
It is. I mean, it was never the intention to do that, but basically demand dictated that, actually. And so I had a bit of a wake-up call, actually, last Friday. I was invited to sort of like a Future Voices event one of the speakers bureaus were putting on, and they were talking about, recognising that your speaking is a business and it's potentially a multi-million-pound business. And I sort of was like, God, I really need to put some effort into the business. I've been working for it and putting money into it, but not really thinking of it as a business per se. And actually, it was just a good wake-up call to say, I've been running it. It's been a very successful business. There's no overheads to it. It's just two of us in it, my husband and myself. And actually, it's been great. And I've been doing it now for 12 years. And
is that how long you've been doing it for? 12 years?
I left the Air Force 12 years ago. And I mean, I was not doing very many to begin with, of course not. And then it was growing steadily. And then after lockdown, it just went ballistic. And last year was the busiest I have ever been. I barely came up for air. I worked out, actually, I did over 50 events in September, October, November last year, which when you actually think of working days, take out the weekends, 50 speeches in 3 months. Wow. That is a lot of speeches. Some crazy, two a day, some 3 a day. And all over the world. In that time I think I was in Barcelona, Berlin, New York, so not just London, and the UK, but actually travelling as well in that.
Do you find it difficult to stay emotionally involved in what you're doing in that way?
No, I don't actually, and I think it's a really interesting one. I'm a very, very extrovert person, so I have a lot of energy, and every time I do a speech, I make it personal to them, so I feel invested in what I'm doing. And it doesn't take much to tweak. The nice thing is that I'm telling a very similar story each time, but the emphasis I will put on different bits of the story will be dependent on what the client wants. And so I think what I do is really simple until I see people who don't do it very well. And then you realise actually what you do is you do it very well. And I think that's the thing that I always get as feedback is it felt like it was tailor-made to our messaging. And, and I can do that even when I'm, say, sitting there listening to the session before mine. I will be able to incorporate all of the bits from the session before mine into my speech by the time I stand up on that stage. So it's good actually. I enjoy what I do. So no, I still give every single one the attention it deserves.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the one thing it's concerned me with the podcast in ways. Is that okay? We were talking before this about monetization and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest, probably a concern of yours early on would have been, how do I make sure I actually care about what I'm doing? I care about the people I'm delivering a message to. Yeah. Because if you don't care about that anymore, you're delivering a shit product.
I know. And then actually you're taking away all your credibility in exactly that moment. And, if you're doing 3 speeches in a day, it's easy to say, well, surely it's losing some energy. But bizarrely, it still doesn't. I know. I don't know. I mean, my husband literally says, I absolutely have no idea how you do it. But I do. And it's sort of done well, really. It's done me well. Maybe I'll just retire now.
Okay. On the icebreaker, we were talking about, I asked you the question, what is the one piece of advice you give a 16-year-old Mandy? And you said, I think you said, be unapologetically yourself. Yeah. And then you mentioned about joining the RAF as a female, going into a male dominated. Well, obviously the military is male dominated in general, but also as a specific avenue you went down, male dominated, and you give some advice on that. Now, do you think being unapologetically yourself as a female is easier if you're an officer and harder if you are not?
No, I don't see why it should be any easier as an officer. I think it's difficult whether you are non-commissioned or commissioned, to be honest, because it's about, I think confidence helps, and I think experience help. And that's why it was, what advice would I give to my younger self on that front? Because, you know, it's easy for me as a 51-year-old woman now to sit here and say, just be yourself, when actually all you want to do is fit in. You know, and I just think, thank goodness the world has shifted as well, and culturally we have shifted whereby people can be themselves now. Because if you're constantly morphing your behaviours to fit in and be that, I'm going to say, the grey bloke, that person that we're told to be when we go through training, well, I was never going to be that. I'm 6 foot tall, I've got a horrific laugh, and I'm, you know, I mean, I literally, you know.
I haven't heard it. Okay.
So I've made myself cough now. But ultimately, and I sound like a brain donkey, and when I get going, everyone just starts laughing with me. And so it's a bloody nightmare in the bar. My mum's got it, my sister have got it. So I think we had
They laugh the same way?
Exactly the same way. I mean, we had my graduation from Cranwell. We were outside and we were in this queue for a barbecue or something. It was the big night. Everyone's in their full dress, you know, military dress. My mum's in a ball dress. Mum got a heel of a shoe stuck down a grill outside, you know, like some grid on the floor. Well, the three of us started laughing, and by the end of it, the entire queue for this barbecue were all laughing, but also laughing in the same way. They also, you know, it's like, what on earth? And people think we're making it up until they meet my family, and then they're going, shit, she actually doesn't make it up. That is her real laugh. So no, there's no way I could ever be the grey person. That's just not me. And I tried going through officer training to be this person, you know. But then I thought, do you know what? It just annoyed me.
Well, it's terrible advice. Be the grey person's terrible advice.
It is.
Because that's great if you're a grey person.
Yeah,
it's not
fine,
great if you're not.
But it's not so great if your flight commander, who is making the assessments as to whether or not you're going to pass as an officer, is a grey person. In my book, I called him Flight Lieutenant Beige.
Oh, God.
I thought I just had to rename him. I thought I couldn't put his real name in there. But, yeah, I made him Flight Lieutenant Beige because he was just a flat line of non-emotion. He was an engineer by trade, and he was very process, and he did not know what to do with this really extrovert woman. You know, he'd say, Mandy, you're too you need to be more feminine. I was like, sir, how do you want me to be more feminine? I'm wearing at the time when he's saying that to me my full NBC kit, and he's saying, I said, is it when I'm wearing my NBC kit, do you want me to be more feminine now? Is it when I'm going to be trained to go to the front line and potentially kill people? Would you like me to be more feminine then? Or would you like me to be more feminine when I'm in the bar, when I'm ordering the 2 half pints because I'm banned from ordering a pint of beer?
Well, what was...
Yeah, we weren't allowed to drink pints.
Oh, what, women weren't?
When women weren't allowed to drink pints. Wow. So I always got 2 halves.
What was his motivation for that? Must have been because it made him feel uncomfortable.
Well, because that was his personality, and that was who he thought... Yeah. That was his perception of that's what would make a good officer, was that the women should still be very feminine. Well, you're bringing a new breed of women in that had not been pilots sort of coming through up to now, and that the rules had only just changed to allow women to be fast jet pilots. And so, you know, you've got this new breed coming in who perhaps are going to be a little bit more alpha, a little bit more red in their characteristics, because ultimately they are going to be the people that possibly would be attracted to going into being pilots. And they had to change their ways as well.
The reason I asked about the unapologetically yourself, or be yourself thing, difference between the officers and the rankers, if you want to call it that, is because, regardless of whether you're talking about a female or that advice to anyone, I think it's being, you know, even not even in the military regard, it's to do that is easier, I think, if you've got something that elevates you a little bit in status somehow, like being an officer does compared to doesn't. So it's much easier to be yourself if you're less likely to be attacked
or ridiculed or all of those things.
And that is dependent on where you sit in this social hierarchy,
order.
right? Yeah, exactly. So it's much. It's great advice. I
Yeah.
don't disagree with it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
super hard to do. Like it's something I really struggled with when I was young. I'm not who I am now is not who I was before. It's
No.
it's one of the reasons I'm very grateful for the military. I was a complete introvert, and I
Right.
give the appearance of an extrovert now. And
You're now a
disattribute that.
confident
Otherwise, I'm
introvert.
not.
Well, my husband's
Yeah.
an introvert as well, and
Okay.
yet no one would guess he was in the Navy, and so again had to learn how to be sort of put yourself out there as a bit more extrovert. So I think the military teaches us, perhaps as introverted people, if you are, how to have the skills to be or to come across as a little bit more extrovert, which is tough because how do you energize you?
How do you?
How do you energize? So when you're feeling tired, how do you energize?
Oh, tired in what way? I don't really.
Well, so say you're just, you're a bit exhausted with life, you've had a really busy time at work, you're just a bit run down. How would you then energize? How would you get your energy back?
I'm trying to think of the last time I felt like that.
Okay, well, that's lucky. I mean,
Well, I used to do it through alcohol.
okay,
Change mindset. And
Yeah.
That's why I don't drink anymore.
right.
One of the reasons I don't drink anymore. But I don't really get like that. I
You
think
don't get tired.
no. I don't get tired. I can get. So I know people that get tired socializing. I tend not to get tired socializing. I tend to get fed up. Maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Disinterested, and that's mainly because that's that introvert part of me. Like if I have conversations with people and I'll say I'm not really a big fan. I'm not really a good socializer, and they'll say, well, are you taking the piss? You sit down with different people every week, and
But
I
this
see
is
you
completely different.
This is different, but
Yeah.
on the outside, I can be sociable when I need to be if I see a reason for it, which sounds a bit plastic.
Yeah,
But if there's no other reason
Then
to
just-
do it, then
yeah.
if I'm not interested, I find it really hard. And in that case, as opposed to energizing myself to be able to do it, I'll take myself out of the situation because I find it really uncomfortable for
Yeah.
some reason. I don't know why. It maybe I think it's rooted in the real lack of confidence and self-esteem I had when I was really young.
yeah.
I think that's still there in some way.
But I think if you intrinsically look at your character type, so the classic Myers-Briggs type thing. So for myself, if I ever do any of the personality testing, I am as E as it comes. So I am absolutely through and through extrovert. And people sort of say, oh, you really? And it's like, well, you look at almost where do you energize. So my sister and I look very, very similar. We sound very similar. You would assume that we are very similar characters. When we are tired and there's a social on that night or it's going out with friends, I will take that every single time. And my husband goes, how are you doing that? You're on your knees. You've been away with work the whole week. Why don't you just sit in and watch the TV? Like, what? Because to him, that will be his idea of hell. Because when he's exhausted or tired, he just wants to shut down and not speak to anyone. But I still energise with others. And my sister does the same as Craig, my husband. She energises by herself, by watching TV or by reading a book. But I still energise externally because I just get that energy from other people. And I think that's how you end up working out whether you are a true introvert or a true extrovert. It's basically looking at how you energise yourself.
I don't know the answer to that question yet. I don't know how I would do it or how I have done it.
It's one to think about, isn't it? Mull
It
over.
is one to think about.
Come back to me when you've thought about that one.
How do we get onto that? Oh yeah.
To be unapologetically yourself. A bold statement, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. There's something else you mentioned, which was we're in a much better place now in terms of what people can do if they want to do it. Groups which have historically not been able to do that. Females have been a classic example,
Yeah.
but I think we're still at a stage where, and I totally agree with you, but I think we're still at a stage where, unfortunately, many people, let's take women for example, many women, they still have a mindset which makes them think they can't, which makes them think they're going to be judged in things when they're not, which makes them think they're going to walk into a meeting room full of men and they're being judged because they're a woman. Maybe the case in some cases, but I think most cases it's not, and I don't think there's anything can be done for that apart from we keep going as we are, and over time that mental block barrier will reduce.
I don't know. I think that there's two sides of that one really, because having been that person that goes into a room, I think so. If you are a man and you are used to going into a room and it's full of men, you will have probably no real... You cannot live that person's shoes of to say, as a woman going into that room, how it feels to do that. Because ultimately, unless you, of course, are going into a room full of women and you are the only man, and men hate that too, because they're like, oh my God, this is like a different breed, because the conversation's completely different. You know, I mean, my husband loves that because he loves nothing more than chatting to women. But, you know, for a lot of men, they wouldn't like that. And I think when you do that, so a classic would be, I was pregnant, I'd finished flying the Tornado, I was on a ground tour, and I was at Strike Command, and I was told to basically go up to British Aerospace, and I was looking after all the aircraft documents there, and being a linchpin basically as part of the group representative to talk to British Aerospace about developments that were going on the Tornado GR4. And I went into this room, didn't know any of them from Adam. We sat at the table, they started talking engineering speak, and I sat there for the entire first one just thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about, but didn't have the confidence at that point. You're thinking, hold on, this is crazy. You've been in the Air Force for 12 years. Why haven't you got the confidence? Because I was the only woman in the room, I didn't want to put my hand up and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I think they would look at me and go, why have you no idea? On the second time I went up, I said, can I just ask, can you either A, provide me with a list of all these acronyms, or just speak in longhand for this first session? Because I said, I came last week and I have no idea, and therefore I'm therefore not able to offer anything. They said, yeah, but you flew the Tornado, surely you know them all. I was like, no, because these are all engineering acronyms. I said, do you want me to throw all my flying acronyms at you and see how you crack on? So it doesn't have to just be the only woman in the room, by the way. It's anything that acts as a barrier, different nationalities, different languages.
Exactly, it's different.
So that was an isolating experience, that not just because of my gender made it worse because I was the only woman, but actually it was more that I was completely and utterly cut out from the conversation because I didn't know what they were talking about.
Okay.
So you've got two different sides of that, haven't you?
And yeah, exactly. It's not about men, women. It's about, in general, it's about differences. It's about white person walking into a room full of people who aren't white.
Yeah.
It's about woman walking into a room full of men. It's about a para-reg guy walking in uniform into a room full of RAF people,
and thinking,
people who aren't para-reg.
That is exactly what it is. And it doesn't... I mean, I've got a great friend who was one of the first openly gay pilots in the Air Force, you know, and he talks about this horrible feeling of just never truly being able to fit in and bring his true self to work. The stress that he was under from the outside, white man, fits in perfectly, look. But inside, he's in a world of pain. And his stress
This is before
you were allowed to openly be gay in the Air Force. So he was hiding it. Oh. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, it only changed in 2012.
Man.
You know, and actually I look at him and I think, no wonder, you know...
2012, was it?
Yeah.
That's wild, isn't it?
It's crazy.
That late on, 2012.
So,
that changed after I left. I didn't realise. I'm interviewing a lady next week.
Actually, no, wait a minute. I might be wrong on that. I'm thinking, actually, I'm wrong because it was while I was in.
Oh, okay.
No, it must have been before that. Was it 2002? I think it might have been 2002.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I think it was 2002.
I'm interviewing a lady next week called Jackie Moulton.
Okay.
Is it next week? You've seen Prime Suspect?
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Right. Jackie Moulton is the real-life detective who Helen Mirren's character was based on.
Ooh.
The actual person. So you probably didn't know it's based on the character.
No.
It turns out she's a friend of the family I never knew. Right?
Happy days.
She's on next week. I think it's next week. But the point I'm to come on to is that she was a gay female copper first in the flying squad back in the 70s. So, you know, I think about these people who have to hide these things.
I know. It's awful.
Oh my God. I can't imagine the emotional torment. But going back to what we were talking about, that, you know, being different, walking into a group of things, you can't ever change that. The reality is that if you walk into something and you know you're the minority, you are naturally going to feel something there. Your brain is subconsciously going to make that assessment, because you do. You walk in visually, you take it all in. Okay, four walls, door, you know, and
I don't feel
it's hot, it's cold, it's light, it's dark, and a bunch of people are, Jesus,
yeah,
I am not one
they're
of these.
RAF. Crikey.
Are they a threat? No, they're not. you can't take away from that. I think you can combat it. That's almost like a kind of imposter syndrome, right? And one of the ways I really impacted me when I was young, thinking about other people who are judging me, and everyone goes through that.
Yeah.
And I think it's more prevalent in women probably than men. The way I counted that in myself was now if I get nervous, I do get nervous a lot where social situations are concerned. Before we Dutch courage and have a pint or two before I walk into a situation where I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know why I had that fear, but it would be fear of meeting people. And now I think I'm going to put myself in their shoes. What are they thinking of me when I walk in? In reality, they're just seeing someone walk into a room. They don't know who it is. They ain't paying any attention. At worst, they're going to go, ginger guy, white guy. I don't know. It looks like a bloke. That's it.
You're not that ginger.
And it's something I try. I've got 2 young girls, and I try and say to them in a situation. There's no need to be embarrassing. It's things like go up to when they were really young. Go up to the counter yourself, and you go and get it. It's fine. But
I don't want to.
The guy behind the counter or the woman is just thinking they're the customer. Yeah. And I think that's the only way you can combat it. And the reality is, a woman walking into that group of men these days, around the table, those men are thinking a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I don't care.
That are woman, cool.
Yeah.
Right? Are woman, okay. Are woman, they may make an inherent judgment on whether she's attractive or not. The same happens on the flip side. But
Yeah,
they
of
just
course it does.
naturally make... Now,
Yeah.
the difference is, do they treat her differently in the context of that meeting than they should? Or do the group treat the person, whether it's a female-male difference or whatever, differently based on what they look like in the context of that meeting, for example, just based on what they say?
Yeah.
Or do they judge them based on merit? That is the key.
You want to be based... I mean, obviously you want to be judged on your skill set, and that's the whole thing. And I think when you take yourself back, ultimately that's why you... potentially, if you are different, you feel you've got to outperform other people, because you think, I only want people to say she got there on her merit, not on the fact that she has a pair of breasts.
Yeah, exactly, and there's a lot to be said for people who achieve something when they are the minority, and they achieve something that normally the majority is achieving. It's an incredible achievement. It's been harder for them than others.
Yeah.
And I think that's getting recognised more and more.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
it's good. We're in a better position these days. I think it annoys me that it gets in lots of different things, not just male, female, or anything else. That it gets painted as it's like we're still in the 70s, and in reality, it's not.
We're not. The world has changed dramatically. There's still a lot of work that can be done, but if you just look at where we are, and I always say, I do a lot of speeches still with schools, and I just say you can't put the lens of today, by the way, on the lens of 30 years ago.
Great advice.
We can't just rewrite history and say how appalling that was and what a shocking environment. Poor Mandy. I didn't feel like that. I wasn't a victim. I could go into a room and every screensaver is a naked woman. Well, I can make them all naked men. And the next day they'll all be landscapes. So, I can go into a room and it was wall-to-wall pornography. I can strip the porn off the walls, stick it outside and yell, "Porn's up, boys," which is what I did every time I went to the Gulf. I wasn't a victim by that, and I didn't feel like a victim. But looking on the lens of today, it's easy to look back and go, that's terrible behaviours. Oh my goodness, poor you. Well, it wasn't poor me. You just got on with it. And, and I'm glad that the people of today are not having to go through that. Of course I am. But please don't think that there was anything, I'm not scarred by it.
No. The problem is that some people are and were.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is when it becomes truly offensive, obviously. And there's a difference. I mean, I was bullied by somebody. He made my life truly unpleasant. I am more scarred by that than any of the non-malicious behaviours. Those just need to be called out as poor behaviour.
You mean when you were serving?
When I was serving,
What was it? Can you...
Yeah, I mean, I was in the Gulf for the first time, and there was one of the guys who was a very big character on the squadron. Same rank as me, but very senior, was one of those sorts of people, like top end of that flight lieutenant rank, waiting to be promoted, Sort of quite well respected, but just a really big character. And he decided that he would make my life really quite unpleasant on the squadron. I'm out in the Gulf, first time serving overseas, only woman on the squadron, 200 men, me. That was pretty brutal, you know, 1 20-minute phone call home. No mobile phones to be FaceTiming loved ones with. You know, it was that 1 20-minute phone call home a week that you had to sort of negotiate the one phone to use to speak to someone. And he just decided to, every briefing he would pick on me, every time I walked out of the Scotland building, if there were a group of guys, they all fell silent, knew they're talking about me. Got to the point where I was not leaving my room. I would just sit in my room and read, or go on the squadron roof building and sit and read up there because there was no one up there. And he got to the point where I was so unhappy. I just thought, if this is the Air Force, this is not the Air Force I wanted to join. I have worked so hard to get here, and this is awful. And I got home and I said to my husband, his boyfriend at the time, this is it, I'm going to PVR. I just can't tolerate this. And he said, don't let one man take you down. And he basically did a load of like counselling. Not counselling as in...
Was he your husband?
My husband, yeah,
Oh,
but
legend.
he's really good at active listening and sort of coached me in how to have a really difficult conversation, gave me all the alternatives, you know, how that person could respond, so that when an opportunity arose and I saw it, and it was actually in a bar environment actually on a Friday evening, and Craig was with me, good wingman, he said, and I sort of went, oh, this is my moment, and he said, yeah, it is. And
Craig.
being my husband.
Okay, yeah.
And he came over with me, and I said to this guy who was with his wife, are you aware that you made my life a living hell for the entire 4 months we were over in the Gulf?
And his wife was next to him.
Yeah, and she
God.
she literally looked at me and she said, you did what? And he said, what? And I said, yeah. And basically, what was really good was I reflected on...
That is ruthless.
It was quite ruthless. Yeah, but I thought, you know what, you were an absolute SH1T when we were away. And so I regaled him, but I didn't do it from an emotional standpoint. I did it from a fact. So when you did this, this is how it made me feel. When this happened, this was my response. And you would have had no awareness of that. And he just sort of listened. And she was sort of like frowning. Then we went away, and on the Monday morning, he calls me straight into his office, and I thought, oh, God, this is not going to be good. And he did. He reflected on it. He said, I've been thinking about it all weekend, and I did exactly every single thing that you said I did, and I just want to apologise. And I thought, wow. And he said, I just want to tell you why.
How long after was that?
It was about a month afterwards, perhaps not even a month.
So it wasn't that long.
It wasn't that long after. And basically, he sort of said, I'm so sorry, my wife had just had our second baby. She was suffering from postnatal depression. I had to leave her with a toddler and a 3-week-old baby. I was missing the first 4 months of my daughter's life. My wife was angry that I wasn't there to help and support. I was hearing her anger all the time. I was feeling guilty for that, disappointed that I couldn't do anything, and angry. And you were the one person that probably represented
Easy
most...
target as well.
Yeah, easy target, and the person that represented that side of life that was making him feel angry. And so he said, I channeled all of my anger towards you, and I'm sorry. And I thought, well, at least you've had the balls to do that and reflect on it. And actually our working relationship really changed after that point, but I was really disappointed to hear I met up with a bunch of Tornado mates and that his behaviour has regressed and he went back into bullying other people.
I'm kind of not surprised.
I know.
Because those kind of behaviours, and men are really, I mean, it happens in women as well, like where you get the, well, no,
In fact,
it's more
some
common in men,
some of the
behaviour.
women, I mean, often people will say, like, women bosses can be sometimes some of the worst bosses, you know. So
Yeah. I mean, the piss taking is more, as in the venomous piss taking
The mind
is more on
games
the
of that, yeah.
men's side of things, isn't
Yeah.
it? That way of doing it, and unfortunately, in men's groups, whatever those kind of groups are, wherever they are, that can bring with it a social status with it, which is backed up by people who are other men who are not sort of emotionally aware enough or like life experienced enough to realise this isn't great behaviour, this is not a good role model.
Yeah.
Or those who are of equally poor character.
Yeah, and that's why I love that fact that we're doing a lot now around that bystander theory of, like, don't be the person that allows poor behaviour to continue. You're almost as guilty. If you don't call out that poor behaviour that you're seeing in the workplace or whatever it is, then you're almost as guilty as that other person. Yeah. And you know what, I've got the best example of that ever was when I was going through Valley, and you know, I was the only girl on that course. There was like 12 of us, and every time I would land, there'd be banter. And it was banter, by the way. This was not malicious banter at all. But every single one of the instructors, and say you've got 15 instructors, would make a sarky, funny comment to me about my gender. So it would be something like, oh, we can tell which jet Mandy's flown because it's the one that's not parked straight, you know. And I'd say, oh, sod off. And they'd say, oh, obviously you're on your period. And then you'd say, oh, I'm just going to the toilet. Oh, she'll be sometime. She's got to reapply all her makeup before the debrief. You know, so again, not just a bit tedious and thoughtless, but nothing malicious really. But it was my course mates didn't like it. I was so thick-skinned by now to all of these sorts of comments. It sort of went over my head a bit. I just wasn't going to let it affect me. They didn't like it. They went to the boss. This one guy, Tristan, went straight to the boss. And he said, can I have a word? And he said to me, Mandy, do you mind if I say something? I said, my God, no, that's bloody kind of you. But he's a classic not allowing to be himself, to be a bystander in that. And he said to the boss, can you have a word with all the instructors? I don't think they're meaning maliciously, but it's tedious for Mandy. It's tedious for us. Why should she be highlighted every single time? And they all came and apologised and went, oh my God, we're so sorry, Mandy. We didn't mean offence. I was like, I know you didn't. And they said, we'll just stop doing it. But it's that whole thing of, we don't realise, it's when does banter become bullying? It's when it's the receiver, the person that is at the end of that, is not taking it as banter, when it is becoming upsetting. You know, ultimately, if that person is perceiving themselves to be, you know, being put down or bullied, well then, however light that banter is not acceptable.
No. Banter has a place. There's a reason it happens.
I know, and I'm with you, and I think it's sad that we've not got any banter in the world.
I know you're not saying that. I know you're not saying that it doesn't have a place, because you know, I think back to, and I've mentioned this a couple of times in the podcast before. When I was younger in my military career, there was a group of us. And long story short, there was a guy part of that group, and he became the victim of banter, to the point where, retrospectively, over the last couple of years, I realised he was totally getting bullied, and I was part of that group.
Yeah.
It was banter that went too far.
Yeah.
And he did well in his career. I know, or he's doing well in his career. He's still in now. I haven't seen him for many, many, many years. But he would think back on that stage of his career, I have no doubt, that stage of his career, and think, fucking misery. And I was part of that. And it's led me to assessment. How the hell did that happen like that? Why did that continue like that? And it's, like you said, banter went too far. And the purpose that banter serves, I think, it's camaraderie building, it's community building, it's bond building, it's exploiting each other's weaknesses, it's expressing vulnerability, humility, it's being able to take a joke. It's between friends, colleagues who need to be close knit and tight, or they just naturally get in that way.
Yeah.
To your point, when the point at which it gets too far is if one of the subject of banter, everyone's a subject of it. One of the subjects of banter, I think an indicator is less engagement back.
Yeah.
Reclusing themselves, they're less responsive, they're not taking it well at all, and that's consistent.
Yeah.
And at that point, there needs to be the group, and most groups will be able to do this, mature groups will be able to do this, be able to recognise and ease off without even saying anything to each other. Take the pedal off. Stop targeting that individual. That's you, as in, okay, we know the boundary of that person. That's the boundary there. We've learned about it. Let's not push it. It can be banter in general. It can be about a specific topic. Those kind of things.
I mean, you know, you alluded to it being ginger earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at school, people were bullied because of the colour of their hair.
It's fair enough.
It is. I mean, smell of wee, what can I say? Rusty roof, rotten cellar. But I've got a really good friend she's, you know, got ginger hair. And she said, you know, she was really picked on at school because of her colour of her hair. And so if you look at the knock-on effect of that through life, you know, because they're strawberry blonde, you know, it's like, what? It's crazy, isn't it?
This is the thing. Again, it's down to who can sling the banter. Hey, if I didn't know you and you walked into a room
You'd
and
say,
I went out of my way
stunning.
I would obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
I would say, and I say it now, I know you. But if I was to go out my way and say something, in inverted commas, banter, I don't know, about your unusual height, about your unusual background, a pilot, about blah, 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 whatever. I heard she went backwards down the runway. Right?
It's fair.
Who the fuck am I to say that?
Yeah.
And who am I to judge how you're going to take it?
Yeah.
I made a catastrophic mistake not that long ago, like years, but not loads of years ago. And I made a joke in a public setting about an individual who was visibly different to everyone else, right? And I made and the influence of alcohol, and it would have been in the block immediately. Well, almost immediately.
Yeah.
In the block, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah. And
because I assessed it after, I got all sorts of accusations thrown at me, and I was assessing it after. So why did I do that? I was in the block mentality mode, and I was making that gag as if everyone I knew was part of the tribe, including that person I made the joke about. It was just complete lack of judgment. And in that moment, I felt initially I was defending myself, and then after I thought, actually,
I had no right.
I felt really bad. I do now because.
Did you apologise?
At the time, I did. Yeah. He was totally fine.
Right. Okay.
He was totally fine with it. But I apologised when I realised there was some backlash coming immediately, and the backlash came the day after as well. I apologised and he was totally fine. But even now I think, was he totally fine? Or was he just saying that? Was he just saying that? Because I could have made him feel like total shit. You know, and I didn't say anything bad. It was literally just highlighting that he was different to everyone else in that moment. And like I said, it was just totally the wrong moment.
It's like where sort of like WhatsApp groups. So my husband's had an incident not that long ago whereby he put an inappropriate comment into. He's got 2 WhatsApp groups. He did. There was one WhatsApp group which was to a much larger group of officers within the Navy, one being the head of the Navy, and then there was a very small WhatsApp group with 7 naval aviators who spoke in a certain way, and it was a bit different, very banterish, perhaps use of the C word, you know, and my husband put a comment for that group in the main group.
But head of the Navy.
And let's just say we called it Seagate ever since, but it's something that's quite easy to do, but the regret is enormous of what is appropriate. So it's that whole thing of where is the line appropriate, but it's when no one's taking offence. No one would have taken offence in this group, but in this group, it's not appropriate, and it's your block mentality. This is my block mentality. This is the wider picture. It's no longer appropriate. But I do think it's a little bit sad when we look at perhaps going too far now, when there is, say, no banter allowed, because actually it takes the fun away from things a bit when you can't banter each other a little bit, like, oh my god, what have you done to your hair sort of comment. If you have to say, oh, you look very nice, it's sort of like everything just becomes a bit more bland, and I like a little bit of banter, and I think it is fun. And I think it's a little bit of a shame, and I do worry about the military these days, that we've become so PC that they've now, you know, no one's eating a fry up, everyone's just on protein shakes, and there is no banter, and that's a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah. What was I going to say there? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, it's an unachievable goal. It's like, you can't have no banter. It's going to happen. It's like, and why are you punishing for it? But part of the problem today is, like, with one of the reasons there's backlash around humiliation talk, banter, right, has come about is because people more and more, they engage online with total strangers as if they know that person. Yeah. And they make gags and they make jokes and they say sarcasm and things that can't be interpreted like that in a written text. Yeah. They do these things, and it's pretty obscene. You go, okay, I get that. Yeah. If you were saying it to me, I get that gag.
In a bar.
You've got no idea who you're talking to. Yeah. They do it on Facebook. They do it on Instagram. They do it on X. They do it on LinkedIn. Well, it's
like the keyboard warrior, isn't it?
LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great joke, wrong place. What are you doing? Yeah. And that's public, by the way. And that's your name. What are you talking about? Mental. But you get drawn into engaging socially on platforms like that, where that's not real social life.
No.
You know.
No.
And you're going to live the repercussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Completely right.
Yeah. So did you always have it in your? I know you've been asked this question before. I'm going to ask you anyway. Sorry. Did you always have it in your mind that you wanted to join the RAF as a pilot?
I did. Yeah. So when I first started flying with the Air Cadets, which is again why I think, you know, it's such an incredible opportunity to have things like the Air Cadets and the Army Cadets, you know, and they do them for the Navy as well. But yeah, sorry, my husband's Navy, so I always banter the Navy. But ultimately, you know, it's such a pivotal part for so many young people. And I'm so pleased that we still invest that time and effort into our cadets. But when I flew with the cadets and I said to the pilot, "Excuse me, sir, do you get paid for this?" And he said, "Yes, it's my career." It was a life-changing moment. It's my career. Because I'd only been surrounded by people growing up in Manchester who went to work to earn money. It was jobs. And suddenly someone's saying, "I've got this passion, I love doing it, and it's what I do, and I get paid for it, and it's my career, and it's amazing." And I'm like, oh my God, I want to do something whereby I'm going to be passionate about it and get paid, and that is a career. And that to me was flying. And so when I had that conversation with him and I flew for that very first time, it was almost like the world aligned and said, right. And I think it was then that I thought, right, I want to be a pilot. But women weren't allowed to be pilots in the Air Force at that stage. So I thought, well, I'm going to keep on doing everything I can. So doing all the cadet stuff. And
so are we talking, what, late 80s?
That must have been 87 when I first flew. So I was 13 or 14. Late 80s. And basically I carried on flying with the Air Cadets. I then got a flying scholarship. So even though women weren't allowed to be pilots, they still gave out women a flying scholarship to a woman, which was 30 hours of free flying in those days. I had newspaper round money saved up to pay for my additional 10 hours. I got my private pilot's license on the exact 40th hour, which is the minimum you can get it on.
How old were you?
17.
Wow.
Yeah, so flying an aeroplane sort of almost before I could drive a car. And then went off to uni and joined the University Air Squadron. So that's like a continuation of the cadets for anyone that sort of is not aware of that sort of system. And now you're being treated a lot more like being an officer. So you start to experience going to officers' messes, cheap alcohol, happy days.
Only halves.
Pardon?
Only halves. Only halves for women.
Oh, no, I was allowed
women.
pints in those days. That was before the officer training. They would allowed it anywhere else apart from at Cranwell when you took to be an officer. But yeah, that was brilliant because that was a pivotal moment where it wasn't just about flying now. It was about, oh my God, I want to be part of the Air Force. I love the camaraderie. I love the banter, like the teamwork, like the leadership, like all of those things. And so I then they changed the rules allowing women to be pilots. I apply and I fail all the tests, not once but twice. Can't do them again. And so it should have been the end of the line for me. But there was this boss, a squadron leader on the air squadron, and he didn't say, "Mandy's failed the test, therefore Mandy's no good." He said, "Mandy's failed the test, but Mandy's actually one of our better pilots going through the flying training, so maybe the tests are not right." And he challenged the Air Force. He got external examiners to come in and assess me. So I had these two pilots came in from Central Flying School. They assessed me as being above average, which was the highest score you can be. And so we've got this mismatch. And basically he then said, "I want to see the information." And he found out that about 70% of women taking these tests were failing them outright, these computer-based aptitude tests, and about 70% of men were passing them. So he's now uncovered an unconscious bias existing within the testing system right at the outset of recruitment that is basically that is biased away from women, that they've been unaware of.
What was the detail? Why? Do you know?
I don't know, to be honest, and I'm often asked that when I do my speeches and stuff. I don't know what it was that was meaning that women were failing. I think it was just that they'd never been even thought with a woman in mind when they were designing these tests. So I don't know what it is about the tests.
Was it Q&A, a Q&A test?
It's not. It's hand to eye. It's mental agility. It's there's 4 hours worth of tests.
Maybe they were testing for something that was not particularly relevant to fly-in, but was weighted towards men being better, and they just didn't realise it.
Yeah, but they did in the end. So I was taken on as an air traffic controller. I didn't really want to do that role, but again, with guidance from this guy, he said, "But Mandy, a foot in the door is better than none." I was like, yeah. And also in the back of my mind, I still loved the Air Force. So I still wanted to be primarily Air Force, but absolutely pilot. But I really believed I would become a pilot. And it's easy to be rose-coloured spectacles and think, well, of course she can say that because she made it. But the reality is I was interviewed by a guy called Gaz Top. Oh my God, I mean, he was an icon from the 1980s and 1990s.
I remember the name.
Gaz Top non-stop. He did a show that went out and he was really into his aeroplanes, and he interviewed me at Cosford Air Show, and I was 20 years old. I've just failed every single test to be a pilot. But when he interviews me, he says, "So Mandy, what's next?" I was like, "I'm joining the Air Force." And he said, "As a pilot?" I said, "Absolutely." And he was like, so what are you going to be flying? I was like, I did keep on saying hopefully in it, which was the slight bit where I didn't want to be arrogant and say, I am going to be doing it. I was like, well, hopefully I'll be able to fly the Tucano at Cranwell, and then I'd hopefully be able to fly this one. And, you know, what does it take? You've got to be competitive and aggressive and, you know, really talented aviator and all the rest. But it was very much me talking that I was going to become a pilot. So that's how I believed that I was going to be.
What was driving that confidence?
Naivety. I don't know. I don't think just naivety. I think it was a belief that the system was wrong. That by now I had proved myself. So I'd been in aerobatics competitions where I'd beaten all these male-sponsored pilots in competitions. I'd finished the flying course. I graduated. I won almost every flying award on that squadron as well for my year. I won the leadership awards. You know what I mean? I was doing really...
You were just some average pilot.
I wasn't being an average pilot. Yeah. I was being above average. And so I felt, well, if I've proved myself here, then surely that is enough waiting for the Air Force. And it shows just how passionate I was, because there was this big competition. And it was called the de Havilland Trophy. And it was where Oxford, Cambridge, Birmingham and Nottingham all get together. It's done in sort of areas around the country. So 4 university air schools get together and you have a really big flying competition, navigation, all sorts. And basically they chose me that year to do my aerobatics. And I was doing the aerobatics. So I was doing a full aerobatics display, and this was going to be judged and won. And it was about 2 weeks before my finals from my degree. And I thought, what is more important? That I practice every single day and go up to Cosford and practice my aerobatics, or that I study for my degree. And I thought I already had a job in the Air Force guaranteed.
What were you studying?
Geography and sports science. And I already had a guaranteed job in the Air Force because I was being sponsored for my final year as an air traffic controller. And I thought, you know what, I need to prove myself. So I didn't spend the time on my degree, but I did win the aerobatics competition, and I thought that will give me the weighting I need to say I could beat the guys. Not just I'm the same as them, but I actually was better than them in a competition. So now look at that as weighting, and all of those things worked. And in the end, we found out, well, they took me on as a test case, and they said, we're going to take you on to find out how far you can get before someone with no aptitude can get before they fail.
First female?
No, I was not the first female. So Jo Salter, so there was Nikki, not Nikki Donaldson. Anyway, Nikki Gibson was taken on, and she ended up flying Hercules. And then Jo Salter was taken on. She was already done an engineering degree and was in the Air Force as a cadet and had gone through flying training, but she graduated, you know, at the top of her course. And so basically the instructor very cleverly in the selection to who was going to go to Valley for fast jet training just covered up the names and said, who do you think should go? And they said, well, definitely. And they said they took it when it was Jo Salter. And he said, she should fly fast jets. And they said, yeah, but she's not allowed to, you know, they're not allowed to fly fast jets. So they in the end, agreed for her to go to Valley as an instructor. They said, well, you can go to Valley, go through the fast jet training, and then you could stay as an instructor.
But you can't fly operationally.
But you can't fly operationally.
Wild.
So she's still going through.
Hell?
And then something changed within the army, I think it was. Someone was taken to court about being able to serve or something on the front line. And because that woman was allowed to serve in combat here, they then they had not got a leg to stand on, and she was already at Valley, already going through, and they changed the rules and said, actually you can, and she was just immediately posted to the Tornado, and she went on to Dambuster Squadron. So it was almost like, I wouldn't say right time, right place, but she was there absolutely through merit. She'd done brilliantly in her aptitude tests, and she was through. So I was one of the first tranches where they were then actively recruited in with the new rules of women being allowed to be pilots.
Wild. It must have been a moment. There had to have been a moment. I hope there was, where those guys were like, "Yeah, why aren't we allowing women in?"
I know, it's crazy. I mean,
it
was crazy. Can you imagine there with Jo on at Valley and them saying, "But you can't go on the front line"? It's like, why? Like,
Yeah.
just anyway. I mean, I'm really good friends with Joe now. In fact, I did a speech at the RAF club, an evening with Mandy Hickson. My God, who would have ever thought that? You know, and Joe, who's a trustee at the RAF club, hosted me.
Yeah.
So that was last night. So that was really nice.
Was that last night? Was it?
Yeah, sorry, Wednesday night. Yeah.
Oh, Wednesday night. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
it's fun.
Yeah, I like this. When you hear about those things, those old archaic rules, especially when men and women come up. I like to try and think. Okay, is there a reason? Like, is there a valid reason that rule existed? But now needs to get rid of, or that thing. And when you was talking earlier on the icebreaker, and just now when you mentioned about the 2.5 pints in the officer's mess, you weren't allowed to order a pint because you're a woman. You go, what? I was trying to think, why? What is the reason? What is the valid reason?
It's not feminine to be seen holding a pint. But I had just spent 3 years perfecting the art of it. And I was drinking mine much quicker than the guys anyway, so I thought, there's no way I'm going to lose out. So I always had 2 halves in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe this is the way to look at things like that. Like you're saying earlier, you look back, you're looking back. You don't look back in today's lens. You want to look back and go, that was bad. Glad it's changed. Not that was bad. We're horrendous. No, we're better now. We're better. It's good now. It's good. My goodness me. So your first deployment was with the 200 strong blokes.
Yeah.
To
Iraq.
The 200 strong in terms of group.
Yeah.
That strength of men, and you to that was Gulf One.
No, that was the defending. That was Optelic, Bolton, where we were defending the no-fly zone over southern Iraq. So we were based in Ali Al Salem in Kuwait, and it was as we were seeing troops building up and everything building up in Iraq. So I mean, my last time I came home about 3 weeks before Gulf War II kicked off.
Did it meet your expectations? If you thinking about before you joined and you were doing your aerobatics and you were that super ninja pilot? I'll describe you as it sounds like
obviously.
You were. Obviously.
I wish.
Did flying the Tornadoes or flying in the RAF in general meet your expectations?
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
Did it really?
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. I think it was an incredible career, and I say that openly to anyone that asks me now. You know, I think the armed forces go through a bit of a hard time on recruiting and things, but you know, I certainly, when I speak to schools, you know, I think it's still a phenomenal career. I think we're just losing an identity of why our young people want to go in, because they aren't as patriotic. We've lost the identity perhaps a little bit of the UK. But it's a brilliant job and I absolutely loved it.
How do we turn that around?
I don't know.
I think part of the reason we've got the recruitment issue that we've had built in for over many years, it tends to always happen in the periods of less operational tempo.
You're right.
And it's the same with retention, right? And you get a mix of people leaving the military because they've seen all they wanted to see, don't know what they want to do, and there's not much going on, and it gets a bit bullshitty. It definitely does in the army. I say a bit, it gets very bullshitty. Yeah. And you get commanders trying to make a name for themselves when it's difficult to make a name, stamp their mark on it and get their MB or OB, especially where commanding officers of infantry battalions are concerned, when it's really difficult to do so because there's no operations going on. And all experienced people leave, you get very bitter people because nothing's going on.
Yeah.
Then when I joined, there was, I don't know, it was like when you joined. But
what year did you join then?
2000.
Okay, so I joined in 94. My God, that makes me feel really old.
Only 6 years.
I know, but even so. I've aged well.
I've aged very well. Very well. I have not. But when I joined, I was sort of at the tail end. I didn't know at the time, but I was at the tail end or the peak of misery time. There was nothing going on. Yeah. It was shit to be in. There was literally, when I joined, there was people who had been in for 20 odd years who had never done a decent operation at all, if at all.
And the problem is you actually end up getting the wrong people then, because you get the people who are, when they're joining because there are no operations on. When you've got operations that are going and people join because they want to go to war, you actually get the people who are not going to be afraid to go to war. They're joining for the right reasons. I want to defend the nation. I want to represent the UK and overseas territories, and I want to be active. I think when we're not in any area of conflict, the people that do join maybe aren't joining for the right reasons, because actually they don't really necessarily want to go to war.
Well, I don't know. I think I think that's not the case. I think they do want to join up and serve the country, but I think when the operational tempo is high, you just get a higher caliber of that kind of person joining
maybe,
up. I can't imagine you get people join up that don't want to deploy.
Well, but you...
As in,
almost,
consciously, I'm joining up, I don't want to deploy.
I know, but it's almost like, well, I don't really know what else to do. And,
yeah, definitely that.
Actually, this might be, and there's nothing going on anyway at the moment, so it's just sort of like a big boys' club or girls' club. You know what I mean? It's sort of like lots of training, lots of phys ed.
I joined up because of lack of options, really.
Yeah.
I initially
a lot of people do.
I initially wanted to join the RAF as a pilot. I don't know what changed my mind. Oh, I think I needed A-levels, and I messed college up.
Yeah. Well,
And then I went to
so
the
it's
Reg.
true.
I
It's
went
so
to the Reg.
true. There you go. But neither of my two boys have got A-levels, and and I've sort of said to them, you're cutting down your options. No, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. You can do what you want to do, and it's so true though. But you're sort of narrowing your options. But
There's more options these days.
there are more options, and that's
apprenticeships
exactly
are back
it.
on the rise,
And that is
aren't they?
exactly it. And also now, I just think we are foolish if we are sitting in these businesses where we don't look at the bigger picture and say, you know what, you've got someone here who's done their A-levels, gone off to university, come out with a geography and sports science degree. Sorry, I can say that because I can take the piss out myself. Actually, it was actually quite a hard degree, actually. Not the geography bit, the sports science bit was. But ultimately, you're going to have people that are coming out with a degree that they've just gone to university because they didn't know what else to do. Actually, look at a young person that's got actively sought an apprenticeship because they don't want to get £60,000 of the debt. They've actually come through an entire system, and they are showing more initiative by a long shot than the person that just did their A-levels and went off to university and because they felt they needed to grow up at uni. Because it's a lot of money to grow up. It really is.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty big one. So I do think we need to look at it in a different way and actually accept the fact that, we are seeing more diversity. If we want more diversity, we've not got to just recruit from that classic pool of, university graduates.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware it was an up and coming path until recently. When my youngest, she wants to be a lawyer, and she said to me, "Oh yeah, I don't want to go to university. I don't think I'm going to go to university now." Oh, I was like, "Oh God, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what?" And she said, "Apprenticeship. I'll go into a law firm as an apprentice." I was like,
So
really? That's an option.
So can you? Is it a 4-year apprenticeship?
I don't know how long it is.
I think it probably is. I know that, for example, like the big four consultancies will let people do accountancy degrees. It's a 4-year apprenticeship, and they'll get their degree at the end of it. And they've earned
It eliminates
money.
the debt as well, right?
Yeah, no debt.
Amazing.
And you've earned £20,000 a year whilst you were doing it. So not only have you not got 60,000 of debt, but you've also been paid 80,000.
And
So
the
you're looking at
network and the work
£140,000
experience.
net difference.
Yeah, exactly.
At the age of 22.
Kids these days, I don't know if it's a real positive thing or negative thing. Kids these days are much more cash aware than
Oh my
we
God,
were.
my two are obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Obsessed with it, I can tell you. But I think that's because of social media, isn't it? And look at my Lamborghini, and you too can have this if you do that.
Yeah, that's
Which is not so good.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's not much you can do about that, I don't think. But, well, maybe there is. That's just down to decent parenting.
Well, I tried my hardest. My two boys went absolutely obsessed with the whole of the whole Andrew Tatey bit, and it was all look at all these guys on doing Amazon FBA and all of this sort of thing. I mean, they were absolutely perfectly ripe for that.
Oh,
my two were. I mean,
there are adults who are completely captured by Tate.
Completely and utterly, and I started to notice there, what they were saying was changing to me. They were started making slightly derogatory comments to me, as if I was a get back in the kitchen comments. I was like, you couldn't have had a stronger role model as a mother, not only when I was in the Air Force, but actually, afterwards as well, being perhaps earning a lot of money, doing what I do, being out to work, sort of talking about things, and I just think, my God, don't please use derogatory language just because you've heard Andrew Tate. And I really noticed it, and so it was really hard as a parent to capture that, because you can't control what your kids are actually looking at on social media.
No, and it's a problem with people like him is that a significant percentage of the life lessons he's communicating, the taglines and all this, they are like valid. You go, yeah,
They
got
are.
it. The problem is everything around it.
I would say
Everything around
95%,
him.
by the way, of what he says is really interesting. It's the 5% of misogynistic, awful, degrading comments
Yeah.
that are slipped in,
Yeah.
but of course that get all the PR. So he would, my sons would send me clips of him on, from Instagram and all the rest of it, saying, Mum, listen to what he's got to say. He's not a bad person, and I thought, actually, my God, if you took that 15-minute clip, you'd think this bloke's like a Goggins, he's an absolute motivator, he's brilliant, he's amazing. But the reality is that was not, the little bit of that misogyny was slipped in at the end, almost on a brainwashing.
Yeah, and it totally intentional.
Very
as well.
cleverly done.
Totally intentional as well. Yeah, Goggins, not a fan.
Well, I'm just throwing that out
Not
there
a
as
fan of
well, I know
Goggins.
there's a lot of shouting there. You two can do this.
Yeah,
Come on, Hugh.
Yeah.
I know. I'm the same. I'll take different people, but yeah, I'm not necessarily that on that one. But.
On the subject of Goggins, did you work all or get much experience with US Air Force?
A little bit, yeah. So we did Red Flag, which is a huge exercise out in Las Vegas. Tough job. Someone had to do it.
Sounds horrendous.
Oh, it was awful. Went out a few times actually to do Red Flag, but the philosophy of that exercise is you're going to train way harder than you're ever going to fight for real. And my God, it's like Top Gun.
Do you want to talk through it?
Yeah, so you're bringing often together many different nationalities. I think the most we had on one was 12 different nationalities. And you are all in a big room, briefing room. They've got this incredible setup of technology. So the people in the control room would be able to see, you've got like tags on your aircraft, they can pick them all up. They can see live what's happening with regards to missiles being fired, air-to-air missiles. And it's this huge, big air warfare training zone. They will put you out on missions, and they'll be within 24 hours. You're working as a collaborative team with all these different nationalities. So how do you do that? How do you?
So you're all in the same squadron.
You're all on the same squadron, and
Okay.
you're up against Red Air, who are
you
the
all in the same
Americans.
airframes?
No. So you're bringing together F-16s. There'll be quite a lot of American flights there as well. I think we had Turkish people and Spanish, and they'll bring over your own aircraft.
Are you warm
And-
enough, by the way? It gets nippy in you.
Yeah, no, I'm fine
Okay,
actually.
go on.
And you, and so you bring together from all over the world. And so we would have, say we'd have a Hercules out there. We would have my squadron out there flying the Tornadoes. There might be a Tornado F3 squadron as well. So, and you might have, say, another Tornado squadron, like, say, 9, who are doing the suppression of the enemy air defences. So you might have two different roles. So 2 squadron might have been out there doing recce. 9 squadron would be doing the SEAD role. You've got the F3s who are doing
SEAD?
suppression of enemy air defences. Okay. So basically what you're going to have is they're creating these enormous packages that were going in against the Red Fighter Air, who was an entire squadron of baddies, the American fighter pilots who were there to shoot you down. So, basically you would go into the room on the first morning and it's like, oh my God, how am I even going to work this one through? You'd have like Blue Air commanders, Red Air, you'd have the sort of OCA, the offensive, combat air, and then defensive, DCA, OCA, and all those different people and all the rest of it. And you'd have to put this mission together, and you'd have about 6-7 hours to plan the mission, and then you'd go and fly the mission. Then you would debrief it with all of their software so you can see exactly who has been shot down. And as you're flying, you might be shot down. You'd have to go out, recharge, then come back in. So it's like an entire enormous game that's being played. But then they would run through different scenarios. Like suddenly you'd be in the middle of the scenario and they'd say, aircraft down. And suddenly they'd put a simulated crashed aircraft out there and everyone would have to change their roles to now, how are we going to rescue that person? So it's someone's
While
now,
you're in the air.
While you're in the air. So somebody's like whoever's the nearest would become an on-scene commander. We saw where the aircraft went down. They'd say, right, you're now on-scene commander. It's how quickly can you change your plan with all these aircraft airborne? So these sort of missions are going on. So you do these so that you're practicing. And you're also flying over the Arizona desert. We've only been practicing in the UK. You can't practice for a war zone like Iraq in the UK. You've got to do it in hot, high temperatures with packages similar to those that are being out there. And so then when we get out to Iraq, we're now at least we've got some knowledge of working with the Americans. We've worked with them. There would be some names of the same people. You know, we'd actually worked with them out in Red Flag, who are now out in the Gulf as well. And so you're putting together these huge big packages in the Gulf, where we'll be flying sometimes up to 80 aircraft from 4 different countries. So you've got, you know, Bahrain, Saudi, Kuwait, and we'd be launching all these missions and coming together. And so that planning is massive.
How much autonomy do you have as a crew in the jet to? Well, yeah. How much autonomy do you have when it comes to flying a mission? So, you know, you're given a briefing, you're given the target, or the objective, or whatever the mission is. How much autonomy do you have in terms of how you're going to execute that plan? And so, the reason I ask it sort of coming to my mind when you were talking about the U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Army is so different to the British Army in the way we do things, the way command and leadership executes missions and trickles down to the.
Is it much more
levels.
top down in America, or
much more top down, and there's much less autonomy provided to the lowest troops. So for people listening, the Americans will be, you know, really sort of high level. A platoon commando is responsible for, you know, a section of three sections, and each section got a section commander. A platoon commander will say, okay guys, this is American, okay guys, we got this enemy bunker, we need to take that bunker out, and then he will give in detail instructions to each of his 3 section commanders what he wants them to do and how he wants them to do it. You're going to go to this point, you're going to go do blah blah blah.
But he doesn't give the why.
Oh, I don't know if he gives the why. I don't know. The British side is platoon commander, we've got a bunker we need to take out, and he'll give a real broad outline of job to each section commander. Section commander, number 1.
Tell me how you're going to do it.
You're going to be fire suppression.
Yeah.
Section number 2, you're going to be taking the position. Section number 3, you're going to be reserve. And then section 1, the one who's going to take the position, the commander's going to take the position, the commander's going to be suppressing. They go away. They have a few minutes or however long to decide and plan how exactly they're going to do that themselves. They come back, they let the platoon commander know, and then they go. Yeah. Very, very different.
And in fact, someone described it really well, actually, to myself as well, which was the in order to. So, you know, right, I want you to secure a crossing across this river. In order to do a resupply to the troops who are further up the thing. So when you get to that bridge in real-time war and you can't take the bridge, you now try and work out a plan, because the bridge was in order to resupply the troops up there. Well, let's try and work out if we could get further up the river and set up some sort of like system to cross the river, so that because we can't do this mission down here on the bridge, but we can still get the resupply. Yeah. And I think that's the whole, something that we do really well, I think, in the British forces, is that we give the why in order to.
They're 3 fixed words, you know, in Britain, British Army command and leadership courses, that those 3 words are fixed as part of the mission. When you write, literally, what's the mission going to be? You write it down, and it's we're doing this in order to
achieve this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's brilliant. And if you're not giving people the in order to, you get to if it was the American troops, for example, and they got to that bridge and they go, can't cross it, mission has failed.
Yeah.
And that's where you're starting to build empowerment a bit within your teams as well, you know, because if you just tell people what to do all the time, they get disempowered.
They must make it work somehow.
Well,
they must.
maybe.
It's like it's just a different way we don't see it working.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't like it.
But I've always felt working with the Americans as well really interesting, in as much as they're very, very process followers. So it's almost like, okay, I've got to be a little bit careful on this one, but it would be, we're going off to do a mission and we're going to be destroying this target. I was on a mission once, and our target was a big gun, huge big gun, anti-aircraft artillery gun. And we were all set up on that target run, and we're going down, and it's like 30 seconds to run. My navigator's, my weapon systems operator is in the back, and he says, continue. 15 seconds, you know, he would say captured. He's the one, I'm dropping a weapon from 20,000 feet on something I cannot see. I'm doing it 100% on his trust. Okay, so I am the taxi driver, a glorified taxi driver with him with all of the kit. All I'm doing is making my switches live and dropping a weapon. All the responsibility of that weapon drop sits on my shoulders, but without any of the knowledge of what he's actually seeing on the ground. So talk about trust between the two of you. It's phenomenal. So I was on a target run, 15 seconds. He says, doesn't give me captured. So in other words, he hasn't positively identified it. And as we're in closer, we get even closer. It's 3, 2. I think I got it captured. I was like, happy now. All the switches were live. And as we're going down, it's 3, 2, and he says, stop, stop, stop. Switches get made safe, everything's covered up, we pull off the target, we don't drop. Only to be discussed on the ground afterwards. No blame, there's no nothing. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm really new to this. Have I failed in some way? Have I not got him in the right position? He said, no, there was a guy with a camel, and he was just walking in, and this was not a top priority target. It was not a RO1, a response option 1. This was quite a low-level target. It wasn't priority. As that person, there was no civilian collateral damage, and therefore you wouldn't drop. And I'm really happy with that. What I was worrying a little bit, and this is where I'll say it's the slight difference perhaps with our American friends, they were tasked to drop their weapon, and therefore they would drop their weapon. And I think that's a slight difference.
So do you know that would have been the case in US pilot procedures then? Okay.
Let's just say I saw examples where, as British troops, we wouldn't have dropped because there was no civilian collateral damage on that target, and the weapons were dropped because I think they're just following their procedure, because it's almost like they become automatons. I have been processed to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm sort of taking out the thinking person in the middle there, and that's what would worry me a little bit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's one of the reasons I don't like the infantry way of doing that things, because it removes sort of sovereignty over decision making.
Yeah.
It removes.
Otherwise, let's just get AI to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the point of having the human in the system? It's so that with 1 second to go, you can say stop, stop, stop. Fine, accept it, and that's what I like about the discipline of it. Though, I also love the fact, that. That's ethical decision making. It's not, I want to drop a bomb. Of course it's not. You are dropping a bomb to achieve to achieve an outcome. If that outcome is not to hurt somebody,
I've met people who just want to blow
shit up. I know, and that is what worry, and that's always what has worried me.
I did not want you around me.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, how many videos have we seen that come out of Afghanistan or something like that with people, from Apaches and things like that, or from helicopters, where you're seeing people inappropriately using their weapons, plenty. And it really disturbs me, because that wasn't the reason I joined the military.
Yeah. How long did you do in the Gulf altogether?
It was about 3.5 years. We were serving out there, and then I got pregnant. At the end of
3.5 years?
No, not in total. I didn't do. Sorry, ask. That's how long. So I did in total. Did for a year of total in total in the Gulf.
Did you do that the entire time with the same navigator?
No, sadly not. They do try to give you a constituted crew for the period that you're out there for, but obviously things happen and you end up flying with sometimes.
How do they pair you up?
When you're the junior, you get given whoever nobody else particularly wants to fly with, perhaps.
Really? I would have thought it'd be more like, we need to match up personality type show. Let's get the most effective team together.
No, that was definitely not my case in the first time I was out there. I was given the person that everyone least wanted to be with.
Why? Why did no one want to be with that person? You don't have to talk about that.
He was a larger than life character. He was a rather large gentleman and was a bit of a strange bod. Didn't quite fit into the squadron. But what you would find is all the other people would always pick their best mate, and then if they're part of the organising team, they're like, great, I can fly with my best mate. He's the nav.
That's not bad.
That's not bad, because they would work really well together. Yeah. That's fine. And actually what you would often find, and I loved, was when a squadron commander or a squadron boss would actually say, if they were the pilot or the squadron boss could be a navigator, they would sometimes fly with a junior pilot. I really like that as well. So you've got a mismatch. They're also trying to match experience levels. They don't want two junior pilots flying together, junior people. They want someone, maybe a second tourist flying with the first tourist, or a third tourist flying with the first, so that you've got a mixture of experience. And actually many times in the Gulf I was flying with fantastic people. And one guy was particularly great, I absolutely loved, and he was one of the flight commanders, and that tour out there was an absolute pleasure, because I was flying with someone who I had huge respect for. I enjoyed his company. We worked really well together as a team together as well.
It's one of the untold things that when you join it up, but I think is one of the most important factors in why, when we leave the military, which regardless however how old you are, we seem to be, compared to our peers of the same age in Civvy Street, a little bit more mature. And that key factor, I think, is that for the majority of your career, you are forced to spend a lot of time, and in my case 24/7 when I was most of it until I got married and I could live off camp. But you're forced to spend time, live with people you haven't chosen.
No.
And you can't choose to get away from them either.
No.
Whether that's a 8-man room as it was when I joined, 4-man room, 2-man room, or maybe you got your own bunk, your own 1-person room because you're a senior Tom or whatever.
Yeah.
You're still in the block with a bunch of people you can't choose to live with, and you're sharing ablutions with people you can't choose to
absolutely.
live
I mean, people say, "Oh, you RAF guys, you're at the Hilton Hotel." We were in porter cabins, glorified porter cabins in the Gulf. 40 of us in this one with this one shower room, of which I'm in the towel. There was no women's or men's. I was just in with all the men, and we're all queuing up. Just got a towel. They brought towels around the waist. I've got a towel around the top. Completely naked underneath. You're all just waiting in the in the queue for the showers. I mean, there wasn't sort of like any personal space. I was actually speaking at an event. It was really interesting on Tuesday night, and it was a very high level event actually. It was a beautiful setting, Lincoln's Hall, great hall. It was just stunning, and all the rest of it. And I was chatting to this guy, and he said, "And what do you do in this?" And I said, "Oh, I'm actually the speaker, so I have nothing." I said, "I don't know one person in this room apart from you now, Richard." And he said, "Do you know what I love about the military?" He said, "Every single person I have ever met in the military has the ability to communicate and make really good conversation." Because ultimately, and I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, because you're, like you said, you're being put in environments where you're always have no control over it, and you can either make the best of those things. So I've always thought we've had the ability, something that is a real skill set, is to talk all the way up to the highest level, all the way down to the lowest level, and to change how you adapt your communication skills, whether you're talking up or down the ranks. And I think that's really, really important, and that's something that actually I look upon as one of my big skill sets that I drew from the time in the military.
It's hugely underrated.
But there's loads of stuff. I mean, I work quite often with organisations that are trying to get their gold star from the military covenant, and or whatever it is. And you say, how many people are you recruiting from the military? What is it they offer? Or I'm speaking to businesses they have vets communities, they have this. And it's like, are you aware just the skill set you're getting above your normal civilian person by recruiting someone ex-military? Project management, timekeeping, leadership, team, all of those, all of those accountability in their decision making, all of these things, you are bringing them with this wealth of knowledge, These are not small things, and every single person from the military will have those, by the way. Whether you're the lowest rank, you will still have picked up on those skill sets.
One of the things that sometimes sticks in my mind when I think about that enforced socialising, if you want to call it, with people that you don't know, is when I think of Big Brother. People look at Big Brother, I'd love to go in there and do that, and I think, would you?
Would you really?
Because that is misery. You are forced to spend time with people you don't know, and there's deliberately been put people in there who are opposite ends of the spectrum, and you're totally isolated. You're cut off from everything. It's like, and I was thinking, I love that. I'd love it because I know I'd be able to handle it more than other people.
I know, and interestingly, I was contacted to see if I'd go on this new reality TV show that's coming out. I can't say the name of it or anything about it, but I got into the 7 different levels of selection for it, and I got into the very, very final stage, and I didn't get it.
Oh no!
And I was gutted. I found out about a month ago, because I would have been out there doing the filming for it now, and And then when I look back now, I'm thinking, did I dodge a bullet or not? And actually, in some ways, maybe it's going to be interesting to see it now on TV, because the decision was made between me and this other woman of a similar age, and it was all done on personalities of how they get on in this thing, because there were going to be only 10, I think it's 10 or 12 of us, were going to be together for 5 weeks.
Oh my God.
In a very small
Isolated.
space.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
And so I was there thinking that'd be fine, because I get on well with everyone. I don't ever particularly lose my shit. And do you know what I mean? I'm generally quite amenable character. And but anyway, yeah, it'll be really interesting when I watch this now on television. And I think, oh my God, those are the people I would have been on this bus with. It could have been quite extreme. So we'll see.
It always those things as well. I feel like, depending on who's like producing it, I feel like they've always got a couple of targets in their mind.
Yeah.
They know we're going to get destroyed by the social media.
I know.
They just know.
Oh, absolutely. And this is what my husband was really worried about. He said, how they edit it is going to
Yeah.
be really, really the important thing. And they can make anyone look bad by taking something completely out of context. And that's the only thing when you are signing up for that. But it was with the BBC. So I thought maybe there's a bit of credibility there. I'm hoping that they would have done a good job.
Yeah, yeah. How do you get to that? Oh, would you prefer to do... So, okay, on that subject then. Big Brother or I'm a Celeb? If you had to choose between the two, which
I'm a
would you do?
celeb. Definitely.
It's more fun, isn't it?
More fun, more stuff going on. Okay, then, Traitors or Race Across the World?
I don't know what either of those are.
Do you not?
No, come on, what
Oh
are
my
they?
God,
I don't watch
the
TV.
modern world.
I don't watch
Okay.
What is it? Go on.
So Race Across the World is 4, potentially up to 5 couples, not necessarily couples as in man and wife couple, but best friends,
Yeah.
mother, daughter, son and father, marital couple, age 50s, and then there was like 2 young lads who were in the 20s. And you get popped somewhere, Japan, and you take away all of electronics, no electronics whatsoever, you're allowed. You're given a map and basically some money. 5 weeks later, you have got to end up in a certain destination,
Okay.
but there's lots of different points on the way.
Okay.
And basically, it's just watching how their pair work, and you've got to work out. I mean, in Japan, they couldn't even read any signs, and they're going, oh my God, where are we going and how the hell are we going to get there? And it's a race, and then at each checkpoint, the person that's in last, sometimes they get eliminated. But then you leave with whatever advantage that you got into that checkpoint. So if you got there a day and a half before someone else, they've got to sit there waiting. After those people leave,
Yeah.
and then there's prize money at the end of it. So that's good. That's good fun.
Okay.
I would love to do Race Across the World. So
Okay.
I put that out to them. That's out there. I'd like to
Okay.
do it. And then the other one, Traitors, is where they're all in
Maybe.
a house together, and
Yeah.
some people are the traitor, as in they're voting people out from the inside, but no one in the house knows who the traitor is.
Okay.
And you all get round a table every night, and you say who you think the traitor is, and you agree on that person, and if it's the person, regardless of whether it's the person or not. But basically, if you say, I think the person is Hugh,
They're gone.
they're gone.
And then you find out after if they were the traitor or not.
Yeah.
I think
Well, actually,
back-
as they leave, they turn around and say, I'm not the traitor. And they're like, oh my God, we really liked Hugh and we've now voted him out. Oh
I
my
think
God.
Bags told me about that.
It's good. It's a great one just on psychology of how people manipulate other people. Do the people who are the traitors become really friendly, and they're like, oh my God, who do you think it is? Do you think it's Mandy? Which she has been saying a few things. You're planting seeds of doubt in other people. How much manipulation is there behind the scenes? I love it all.
Oh, God.
Oh, it's just complete mind games.
Cutthroat. Yeah. I got invited to be on Hunted.
Oh, did
a few
you?
years ago, yeah.
I'd like to do that. In fact, Liz McGonagall's been trying to persuade me to go on it with her.
I don't know. Because the reason you said, like, my youngest, I think my eldest said, why don't you? I said, because I don't know how they're going to edit this, or how they can. I don't know if it's legit. Like,
I
because if
know,
I'm going on,
and that's the worry.
if I'm going on,
what's the edit like?
I want to get as far as I can based on how capable I am. Right? All I don't want is to find that I've been flushed out, channeled in, delivery caught. It's like, oh, I couldn't live with it.
I
couldn't,
know.
and the shame.
You've got Jordan Wiley though, haven't
The
you?
shame.
Yeah,
I know
Jordan. Oh, yeah. I
the
love
shame
Jordan.
of not winning.
I know.
I'm so
I'd be the
competitive.
same.
Hang on, Reg bloke. I can't.
Well, I'll tell
no
you
way.
what, that was what was so funny though, was when they said to me in these interviews for this thing, they said, and how competitive are you? So I used to be really competitive, but I'm not quite that competitive anymore. And then we went into this room and they said, this is gaming scenario. And we started doing this like word association game, and it went around the thing like, that's not a colour. It's like, Oh God! Oh, I would appear to be quite competitive still.
Bite my tongue.
So yeah, it was really funny. I was like rugby tackle someone to get some sellotape off them. I was like, yeah, okay, I am quite competitive. It's good to be though.
Did you fancy flying after you left? Did you
Yeah.
do any flying?
Yeah, so I did my commercial pilot's licenses. So I actually got a frozen ATPL, airline transport pilot's license. And then I thought,
I've just realised we've actually got a relatively new patron of the podcast who's ex-military pilot and now is a commercial pilot, actually.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't know when she left. But.
Yeah. I mean, I did all my licenses, but my husband was also an airline pilot by then. He'd left the Navy.
Oh, right.
And he was a
Oh,
pilot.
so he was a pilot with the Navy?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And so he'd left the Navy in 2000. He'd been working for a company called GB Airways, and they then got bought out by EasyJet. So he was now flying for EasyJet. By now I've got a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm leaving the Air Force, and I'm thinking, if I become an airline pilot, both boys have just started school now, how the hell is this even going to work on logistics? You know, of what happens if you're diverted? What happens if something happens? You know, what happens if you're called in on your standby, which you obviously always are? And I just thought with both of us being airline pilots, there's no stability whatsoever. So I was starting to doubt whether or not we could both do the job. And then I was flying
It's
with...
a pretty demanding job stressfully as
I
well.
know
isn't
as
it? Oh, it's
well.
like a
I
horrendous
know.
job.
And my two boys were quite challenging. I mean, absolutely amazing boys. But my God, I mean, it's not going to be surprising that they're very strong-willed, is it? I mean,
Maybe you should have become a commercial pilot. It would have solved... You wouldn't have to deal with them.
Somebody said, do you travel much with your job? I went, not enough at the moment because they're teenage boys and I'm locked in with them. I did COVID with them at home. I thought it was going to be a death in the house. It was not going to be through COVID, I tell you. It was not going to be me. So anyway, I was flying with the university. I was flying with the Air Cadets as a volunteer reservist. So I carried on doing that for 8 years after leaving the Air Force. So I'd go back at the weekends.
What were you flying?
Just a little propeller aeroplane, Tutor Grob it's called. Okay. But you take up the Air Cadets for half an hour. Lovely way of passing it on. Yeah, it's brilliant. And I really love doing the weekends because at the weekends you get to fly with the Air Cadets, not just the CCF from the private schools. So in the midweek you do all the CCFs. And I tend to think they're just doing it because they've got to do a club on a Wednesday afternoon. But your Air Cadets, the ones that have actively chosen to do it outside of school because they really are passionate about it.
My sister was an Air Cadet. I think she started early teens, if not younger.
Yeah.
And she's still part of the Air Cadets now.
Yeah.
She's a lawyer in the military.
Brilliant.
She's still part of the Air Cadets now. But
And
I remember
think that's fantastic.
Remember her first time she went up in a Hawk.
Oh wow!
I think she went up in a Hawk as part of it. RAF, up in RAF Valley maybe.
Yeah.
I remember I always think back and it's like being a major. Probably why she joined up because of the Air Cadet. Loved it.
Well, I think a lot of people are. It's a really good stepping stone. And I think when we fly with them, I was flying with this girl, and in fact, it's how I finished my book. So I do often sort of mention this story, but she was my last cadet of the day, and I flew with her, and she was a really natural pilot. And I'd said to her at the end, she was a bit grunty, a lot of eye makeup. Slightly worried that she wouldn't be able to open her eyes with the amount of mascara when we pulled G. Anyway, we landed, and I said to her, "Is this something you might want to do?" And I said, "You're really good." And she said, "Oh, I bet you just said it to everyone." So I said it. I don't say this to anyone. Is this something you might want to do? You're really naturally talented. She just looked at me, got eye contact, and went, "It's all I've ever wanted to do. I was so scared I was going to fail. I decided not to show you I was interested." And it really made me, oh my God, I could have burst into tears. And I thought, how many of us do that where, we really want something and then we don't give it all because we're so worried we're going to fail, we back away from it. And it's like this ... Well, I could have done it if I'd ... And I said to her, you can't live your life like that because how many opportunities are going to go whipping by unless we grab them? But I did say to her, how are you doing at school? And she went, school, hate it. And I said, school enables this. You're brilliant. And it's that whole thing of purpose and the cogs turning. And if you're at school and you see no reason why you're being at school, like my boys were, they couldn't see any purpose of school. I don't understand why physics is going to help me. I don't care about history, as a lot of boys feel, actually. Then ultimately you're going to kick against it. And that was how she was feeling. And she said, oh. And I said, you need to get your A-levels if you want to be a pilot. And she was like, oh, right. Anyway, I saw her about a year later. She walked past me in the corridor and I thought, oh my God, it's her. Because I thought a lot of eye makeup. And she said, I bet you don't remember me. And I thought, well, I better do because I started to use her in my speech by then. I didn't say that. I said, Emily? She said, oh, Mum, I'm just so pleased you're here. I just wanted to tell you I got all my exams and I want to be a pilot just like you. And this all happened around the same sort of time. So
She was going into a GCSE year then.
yeah, so so she's got her exams. She's now starting her A-levels. I want to be a pilot, and she said, just like you. And I just spent £20,000 and done my commercial pilot's licenses without a massive desire to fly for Ryanair. Other providers are available. And so I thought, what do I do? And then this, just like you, I thought, oh my God, actually, if I could have the influence over one person, maybe I could potentially have influence over more. And so I sort of decided to make a bit of a seismic shift at that point, because I hadn't been driven by the commercial sector. And I thought, right, it also coincided with a rather drunk dinner party where I was telling the story about being shot at by a surface-to-air missile in Iraq, where we evaded this missile. And this guy, Harvey, at the party said, Mandy, this would make a really brilliant speech, keynote speech. And I said, oh, what? And he said, for like an event. I said, no, you're talking to someone that's been in the military. I've never been to a conference or an event. He said, well, okay, well, at the end of a conference, they always have a keynote speaker, like a motivational one from adventure or military. And this would be perfect. Would it be something you're interested in? And I sort of said, well, I'd need to go and see a few. So I went to see a guy called Alan Chambers, who's ex-Royal Marines, talking about the Arctic. He was one of the most incredible speakers. And I sort of went, oh my God. How did he remember what he was saying without cards? And how did he speak so authentically and using all of his stories from being in the Marines, but also the resilience that had given him to launch his first ever unsupported trip to the North Pole. Anyway, I went up to him afterwards and I said, Alan, how the hell did you do that? And he said, I've got 2 pieces of advice. And I was like, names of agents. And he said, be yourself. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get a name of an agent. But he said, just be yourself. He said, I speak to so many people who are at the back of the room being in a certain way, and then they step on the stage and they're not being authentic. There is nothing more frustrating than that. And I thought, okay, that's really good advice. Anyway, I did a speech with this guy, Harvey, and he said, that was really great, but Mandy, maybe just ditch the cards. Because I had my entire speech written on cards. I was like, and then we were shot at by a surface-to-air missile. And it was anyway, I learnt about speaking from that. So story was great, performance was shit, and basically I needed to turn it around. And
so that young girl was part of the reason you went into it then?
She was. So this all happened at the same time. The Just Like You changed my direction, and therefore I thought, you know what, I'm doing it. So I set up my own business, and it was this massive leap of faith, because I was guaranteed a really good income by going to the airlines, and suddenly I was like going, I did have the catch of my husband who was in the airlines, but at the same time, I had to pay a mortgage, and money was not going to be, there was not that much money around. So I thought, right, how am I going to do it? And basically I just started to say to people wherever we went, oh, I'm a keynote speaker. And they were like, are you? What do you talk about? I was like, well, my time in the military and how I've been able to translate those lessons into really useful takeaways for business. They were like, sounds fascinating. Would you come and speak to our business? I was like, absolutely, because that's what I do. I am a keynote speaker. I'd only done that one shitty one with my cards. Didn't matter. And it's how you position yourselves. And I went to do this speech at a law firm for someone we met on holiday. And he said, oh, I've just taken over as managing partner of this law firm. It's on Blackfriars Bridge, a big event. Would you be the speaker? I said, delighted to, because that's what I do. I am a speaker. The first one I'd done, really. Anyway, so I went along, and Miriam Gonzalez, Nick Clegg's wife, was there. And she was one of the partners in the law firm. And she heard my speech. She said, oh my God, Mandy, I loved that. So inspirational. I'm setting up a new charity called Inspiring the Future. And it's basically aimed at, we want to get 15,000 women to sign up for it, to go into their local school just to talk to the people about what they do. Because we just need to create visibility for particularly young girls about different careers that are out there. Would you come to the launch? I said, oh, I'd be delighted to, because that's what I do, because I am a speaker. And I went along to this launch. There was Claire Balding, Samantha Cameron, who was, David Cameron's wife at the time, not at the time, still is, but, he was Prime Minister at the time. I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting Sam Cam. There was Tessa Jow, there was a space scientist, Maggie. We had leaders of industry there. And I was like right in the middle of all of this. I couldn't believe it. And Samantha Cameron came up to me and I said, oh, I feel a bit overwhelmed to be meeting you. And she said, you're overwhelmed to be meeting me. My 2 children, when I left home this morning, I was like, home? What? that being 10 Downing Street, said to me, Mum, make sure you speak to the Fastjet pilot because you are the coolest person that's here. And I thought, oh my God, here's me in that sort of like imposter syndrome thinking, what have I got to offer? But I wasn't really putting myself out there at all. And I realised that on speaking to those young people that day, bloody hell, I've got a legacy. And my legacy is change. And that is really what I became passionate about. And since I did that, Hugh, which was 12 years ago, I have now worked out, I've spoken to over 100,000 school children in all 5 continents across the world.
Really?
Boom, shakalaka.
Mic drop. Don't drop.
Mic drop. I won't touch the mic. Do not touch the mic. Just imagine you're doing it and pretend.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think, you'll know this from all the people you've met and all the inspirational people you know. I truly believe, and it's, this is another kind of lesson that I learned when I was serving, is that you get, when I was a commander, and I got given, at one point, my team got snipers. My team got expanded by people ready for an operation who weren't snipers, and I was really pissed off about that because it's really precious. Sniper units are really precious about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, what the fuck are you doing? Give me these people who aren't snipers. And I wasn't the only. It happened to 2 other commanders as well. What I learned, which I know now, every single person has something they can bring to the party.
Yeah.
Whatever the party is, right? They may not want to bring it, but everyone has something. There's something that everyone has value. There's value in there somewhere. And something I've learned from doing these interviews over and over and over is, I don't always speak to really well-known, established people like yourself. Sometimes I speak to people who are on because I want to help them promote their business.
Yeah.
I just want to chat them. They're an interesting person or whatever. And you find out every single person's got something unique about them. There's something unique about them, be that experience, knowledge, be that their perception of something, their opinion about something.
Be unashamedly you. That's how we started.
Everyone is exactly. Well, never pull that back. Everyone has something unique that no one else has. You know things I don't know.
Yeah.
I know things you don't know.
We are all subject matter experts in our own field.
Exactly.
It could be a tiny field, but we're still the expert.
Exactly. Yeah. And of all those people who you've gone and spoken to, you never know who's going to be the next Mandy, who's going to be the next Tim Peake.
Do you know what? And I always say, if I can affect the life of one person in that room, that to me is success. I'm going to share this story about this girl. Speaking to a school in special measures in Southampton. This girl was sitting at the front.
School in special measures?
Yeah, it was a school that was in special measures, so it was in a really quite deprived area of Southampton. They were having a really challenging time. There was a girl sitting at the front who had dyed hair and a lot of piercings, and I just twigged it because there was a lot going on. You could sense.
It's a secondary school.
Secondary school, yeah.
It's a strong look for a secondary school.
It was a very strong look for a secondary school. Anyway, the headmistress came up to me and she sort of made a comment, and she said, "Oh my goodness, you spoke for an hour and you held this girl's attention, which was a miracle." She contacted me, not the girl, the headmistress, the following day. And I'm going to quote you her directly. And she said, the girl's name, came up to me after that speech, and she said, "You know what, miss? Fuck it. If she can do it, I can fucking do it too." This was the most intelligent girl in the school. She had been determined to destroy herself. You know what I mean?
Self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage, that's what I was after. Thank you very much. And she'd been doing this by changing the way she looked, by just so much anger, very tough background at home, and that was the way she was going. And yet she was so intelligent. All her friends, they were going to college to do beauticians or something not quite as academic, and the school was saying to her, "Go to college and do physics, do maths, do further maths. You are so capable." "I'm not interested." And then she came up after my speech and she said, "Fuck it. If she can do it, so can I." That to me was one of those moments. It still puts chills up, I still get my hairs going on my arm when I think about that one. Because I was speaking at an event after that where they said, "What's the proudest thing that you've done in the last month?" And it was going around the room with all these business leaders, and I was going to be joining them as a speaker, and I thought, "Oh, what's the proudest one? Oh, I spoke at an event where there were 4,000 people there. Oh, it was really big." And then I thought about that changing the life potentially of that one girl in the room is way bigger than the glorification of standing on a stage and speaking to 4,000 people. What has the most impact? 4,000, the one.
Yeah, you never know whose attention you're going to catch that absolutely needs it at the right time.
Yeah.
Especially schools are a prime example of that. I think my cousin had a real tough upbringing, and he was just existed in an isolation of anyone like yourself, an isolation of the right influence at the right time, being able to make the impact and make on him when it was needed most, and he had really struggled to grow up, like many young people. Real difficult to break out that bubble, that cycle, especially if it's down to who you live with, where you live, who you school with, who you socialise with, and if all of those things are really, really, really wrong, you never get out of it. It's like a nightmare. It's unless it's a light bulb moment.
Of course it is. I mean, my son at the moment is working over in Australia, and he's working in Surfers Paradise, and he's just doing like any sort of work he can get, but working on building sites, just earning good money so he can then go travelling again. And he's just got this like 2-year window that he's doing it in, and at the moment he's working in a big factory. And he said it's really interesting. I literally had this conversation with him this morning. He said every single one of the guys, they're all Aussies in this factory, every single one has done prison time. He said, but Mum, every break we're sitting there. This is like Jack from middle class Winchester. He says, I'm sitting there listening to them. I'm thinking they are all from really tough upbringing. All from, like he said, broken homes. They've all been abused by parents. There's all been alcohol abuse and drug abuse. He said, what hope did any of them have? He said, it's not a surprise they've ended up in prison, because when you listen to it, and I thought, do you know what? This education you are getting at this moment in time as a 21-year-old in Australia, working on your building sites, working, with the factories, it's going to be the people you meet. And I said, I hope it makes you realise how bloody lucky you were. And he goes, well, of course it does. He goes, just by the fact that I ring you because I want to have a chat with you is so important, isn't it? I was like, yeah, actually it is so true, isn't it? But, it's only when you've listened to other people. We as parents can never say, you have no idea how lucky you are, because they don't feel lucky, because they've got nothing to compare it to until they're actually experiencing it first time. Yeah.
Have you done any work with prisons?
I haven't actually, but again, Craig, my husband, and I were talking about this actually, because there are some charities, aren't there, that do a lot of work with the veterans community in prisons, because there are a lot of veterans who end up in prison for one thing or the other. And actually, I think it's not the glorious side of sort of charity work, or but it's, my God, it's an essential bit, isn't it? Have you done anything?
No, I know someone so Jackie, who we mentioned earlier. Jackie talks in, I think this is the main thing she does in terms of speaking, is in prisons, and it's giving talks to men. Yeah. About, I think it's about masculinity and ego and things like that. I think. Yeah. But I had my first visit to a prison was the last few years, when a friend of mine who I served with was back in prison for the second time. The first time no one knew he was in there. The second time I knew he was in there, and went and visited him. And he was like an upstanding member of the prison community. And it was a low level prison, and it was as in low security prison, and it was part and parcel of a young offenders institute as well. So the two things. And one of the reasons, like, he was. Can you hear my belly rumbling?
I thought it was a train or something.
So one of the things he was strangely enjoying about being in there, or finding something worthy of his time being in there, was he was being able to help the young people, mentor the young people.
Brilliant.
Hey, I joined the military, you could do this too, not end up in prison part. That kind of thing. But where was I going with that? Oh, but back to your point about there was a charity he mentioned. I can't remember what it was. The charity works with ex-military who are leaving, and they something like the rate of people who recommit a crime, reoffend when they leave, who have been through this charity, is something like 10% of the actual figure, the normal figure. Really? Yeah, because I think the actual figure is something in the region of 60%, 70%. It's really bad. Like the way our justice system and prison handling system is like shocking. Real bad. People even get back into it.
I know. But talking to Jack, my son, when he said quite a lot of these guys described that being in prison was better than being out of prison because they were away from their parents and the abuse and the streets or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so sad. It's so sad.
Well, they have things that they should have had growing up.
Yeah,
or in adulthood,
stability, routine.
Exactly.
Square meals.
Exactly.
All of those things.
Clear understanding of what is expected of you. Clear understanding of your social fit. There's a guy I was talking about, a guy on a recent episode, and he was a military guy, and he got sent to the Glass House in Colchester and loved it. He's like, he preferred it to being in battalion. Now, he wasn't the most popular in battalion because he was a pain in the arse. He went to the Glass House for a reason. He was a naughty boy. He loved it in there though, because he wasn't. He was able to excel in there because it's simple.
He could shine. Okay,
he could shine in there. He couldn't shine in battalion because the quality he demonstrated was not good.
It's amazing, isn't it? God. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Funny.
What have we not covered? Do you want to cover anything else? I think I've covered just about everything I wanted to get onto.
We've done a nice wide range of different subject matters.
Yeah. Where are you speaking next?
Birmingham next week, actually. Yeah, no, I normally do 2 or 3 a week. So
how often are you overseas doing it?
Overseas?
Yeah.
Probably 3-4 times. No, probably about twice a month. Overseas.
Oh, a fair bit.
Oh yeah.
Really? How do the Americans receive you?
They love it. They absolutely love it.
Really?
Yeah, they do. Well, they always love an English accent, don't they? So, and also they love the vets. They love the vets community. I mean, I get more. They give these coins out there.
Challenge coins.
Yeah, the challenge coins. I've got so many from every time I do a speech in America. They always get given a coin.
They're getting big over here.
Well, it's also that they're given to you like as a sort of like a Masonic handshake, and suddenly you go,
really?
"Oh my God, there's another coin in my hand! What am I going to do with them?" I don't know what to do with them all. I might put them all on eBay.
You should have your own. There's a British company, veteran owned. It's veteran owned, called Challenge Coins UK.
Yeah, but
honestly,
what do people do with them though?
Well, one of the things you're supposed to do with them is supposed to be like I'm part of the group, and if I show my challenge coin, and I know you've got one, and you haven't got yours on you, naughty girl, you are getting fined or whatever the whatever the forfeit is, and that's all. I refuse to play those games.
I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like to your point, I'm not going to carry around like 30 odd coins.
I mean, I've literally got. Oh my God! So I'm I'm a trustee with the RAF Charitable Trust. Been just doing it for over a year, and I absolutely love it. And it's one of these charities that people don't really know much about. So when you go to like the International Air Show, RIAT, at Fairford, all of the profits from that event go straight to the RAF Charitable Trust. And our remit by 2026 is to reach 500,000 young people to encourage them into STEM related subjects. So we're promoting and inspiring not just the Air Force, but also engineering, airspace, all of these different things. And it's an area I'm really passionate about, absolutely passionate about. And I was at the big ball. They have a big ball at RIAT on the first night of RIAT. I think it's the Friday night. And I went along, and I was obviously meeting quite a lot of people. And I just kept on, every time I went to shake a hand, another coin was slipped in. By the end of it, I had like this handbag. And I was sitting next to this guy who was an absolutely brilliant guy from Scotland. And we were roaring with laughter about the coin situation. And he was like trying to do dodgy Masonic handshakes just to try to give me more coins by the So, yeah. No,
Mandy Hickson coin. Mandy
Hickson coin. Watch your space.
Get it done.
You'll all be getting one. And at the end of a conference, you'll be getting a dodgy Masonic handshake with me slipping one in. Obviously a coin, that is.
Been a pleasure. Really
it's been an absolute pleasure as well.
Glad we got it done.
Yeah.
And good luck with it.
Thank you.
And maybe I'll see you at one of your talks one day.
Who knows? You could be that lucky. Watch out, you might get given a coin.
Could do. Yeah, I hope so. Thanks.
Fabulous.
Oh, hang on a minute. Website.
Oh, website. My website is mandyhickson.com.
Easy.
I'm on social media under Mandy Hickson.
TikTok.
Or Mandy Hickson Speaker.
TikTok.
I believe I do have a TikTok account. I can't tell you what it is because that was something my son set up for me when he was all very excited about it. I have a book. An Officer, Not a Gentleman.
Oh, yes, you do. I saw a picture of that book with you and Tom Cruise.
Me and Tom Cruise.
How did you get that?
I would like to say that he ran up to me at the air show with a copy of my book in his hand and said, "Thank
Is it
God
Ria-
I found
Ria?
you." Yeah, it was at Ria. Please, could you sign it? But that was not what happened. He was in the enclosure and he was with the Sir Mike Wigston, who was the chief of the air staff at the time, and Wiggy and I, as I know Mike Wigston, served together on a squadron. And so he saw me doing like, "It's Tom Cruise," like, you know, selfies, and he said, "Mandy, quickly come into the enclosure and meet Tom. And isn't there a copy of your book over there?" Which I had signed for him
No way.
and given to him as a gift. And Tom said, "Oh, I'd love to." And then I said, "Can I do a photo with you?" And he said, "Yeah." And they said, "Get your book in it. This will be really good PR."
Oh, wow.
Tom, I love you.
Love Tom.
So thank you for that. No, he was such a nice guy, really nice guy. And I said to him, "Oh my God, you're one of my heroes." And he said, "Really? I'm an actor. You guys are the real heroes." I was like,
check him out.
I could have kissed him. In fact, I might have kissed him. Can't quite remember at that point. But I was so overwhelmed and so excited. But no, what a gent. But yeah, an officer, not a gentleman.
And the links to the book are on the website?
They are on the
On
website, but
Amazon.
they're also on Amazon. Yeah, Amazon's the best place because it's self-published.
If I pick up a copy and send it to you, will you sign it for me, send it back, and I can do a giveaway for my patrons?
I can do one better than that. I can give you one now.
No!
Now,
Oh,
because
legend.
the RAF Club said, "Oh, we forgot we had 6 copies of your book that we didn't put out because we didn't think you'd sell out." I said, "Well, I did sell out, and it would have been really nice to have those 6 copies." So the reason I was on a bike when I cycled over here was because I cycled over, picked up the 6 copies and came here. So I have one in my bag for you. So there you go. And they're the hardback version. So they are the limited edition. They're like gold dust.
Gold dust.
They are
This is-
worth a fortune.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Almost as much as a Mandy Hickson challenge coin.
Or not as much as that. No, they are going to be very, very, unique. Obviously, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Bags for letting me use this venue. And that's it. Switch these off.
Thank you.